I think coaches are very stubborn, and Thomas Tuchel comes across, in my opinion, as a stubborn guy as well. And he told us back then that he's got his numbers, he's got his stats, they studied it, they knew what the decision was coming into the game, and he wasn't about to change it because he had all that information available to him. I said back then, and I'll say it now, that this game, a lot of it, while you have stats and they have a place in the game, and indeed you have to use them to your advantage whenever you can, it's also about feel. It's also about the moment and making decisions on the run. And some of the best coaches in the world can adjust on the run and make the choices that they need to make in order to have their teams have the best opportunity to win matches. In that game, I thought Mendy was the best option to have on the penalty kicks. He had a great game. He felt confident. He had just come from the AFCON final where he had been successful in penalties, and yet we chose back then to ignore all of that. So I'll say it now, again, ahead of time. If it comes down to penalty, I'm leaving Mendy on the field.
What do you think the plan will be, Jules? I bet they've been practicing the penalties, haven't they?
Yeah, I think certainly they will have a plan. I would be very surprised if the plan is the same, considering he hasn't worked out the first time round. So why would you go again for a change at the end of extra time? Kepa coming on and replacing Mendy and going through the whole thing again. I think this time it would be Mendy's chance, Mendy's opportunity to be in goal for the penalty shootout, and then see if he does better than Kepa. Personally, I would love another crazy shootout, like a 15-14 or something, but with Mendy in goal this time.
And what about you, Craig? What are your thoughts on this?
I agree with the boys there, and what Ali was saying. Mendy was superb, but you know, it was stats driven. We know that, and it just didn't work. So I would imagine, if Mendy is still in the goal and had a good game after 120 minutes, if it goes to extra time, I don't think we'll see the same decision being made. I think he'll stick with his goalkeeper. But I get the feeling we're not going to go that far this time.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of talk about Chelsea, so we must turn our attentions to Liverpool. Jules, we asked you to bring out that Chelsea 11. We've asked you to do the same for Liverpool as well. And as Craig mentioned earlier, it's a big one that Fabinho is out. So what happens?
Yeah, it's huge, and I think then the midfield, there can always be a surprise, like a Curtis Jones, for example, but I think Henderson, Keita and Thiago, again, he picks itself, really. Keita started in the League Cup final. There's no reason why he doesn't start. Henderson, I think, will be the most holding midfielder of the three, and then Thiago will have the role of detecting the pace of the game and bossing that midfield. The front three, of course, there are more options, but right now it feels like Diaz, Mane and Salah should be the front three that Klopp will go for. Salah was obviously, as we saw, rested in the last Premier League match. I believe for this final, and also because he played a lot before that, and he hasn't been in great form lately. Only 1 goal in his last 8 in the Premier League where he scored. So maybe he needed a bit of that rest and played the last 20 minutes. And then at the back, obviously between Matip and Konate, there might be a decision to make for Klopp. And we've seen some big Champions League matches, for example, where Konate was preferred to Matip. But again, we saw in the last game how important Matip can be, especially when he comes out with the ball. He's so good at running with the ball, even dribbling with the ball and creating a 2v1 situation, for example, in the opposition's last third. So Matip for that is so much better than Konate. That there's a case for him. If you want more physicality, maybe you go for Konate, and certainly on set pieces he's been a threat and scored in the Champions League. So I can see a decision there to be made for Klopp, but for the rest it's pretty straightforward.
Craig, we did talk about Fabinho being out earlier. How much of a drop-off is Henderson here? How much of an impact is that going to be?
Well, it's not so much that he's I think drop-offs maybe a bit harsh. I mean, he's a different player, isn't he? I mean, he's been a brilliant, brilliant player for Liverpool. If you'd asked me at the time when he went to Liverpool, would he have this kind of career at that club and would his game improve, I would have said no. And to be fair to him, he has just got better and better and better. But he doesn't have that natural defensive skill set of reading the game that Fabinho has. He's a different kind of player. And you take that out and all of a sudden, particularly with 2 fullbacks, Kay, that go forward like Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, particularly on the right-hand side, where we know Alexander-Arnold has some wobbles defensively. You need somebody that can go and cover that position. So, yeah, it's a huge blow for them. But Henderson can do that job. It's just that Fabinho's one of the best in the world at doing it, and that's going to be a huge miss, clearly.
All right, let's look at the predictions from these guys then, shall we? Because Liverpool are the favourites coming into this game to lift the FA Cup. Who are you going for, Ale?
Well, I can argue that the best chances in that last final that we've been talking about repeatedly went to Chelsea, certainly in the early part of the game. And those chances will fall if indeed Romelu Lukaku is playing to that very guy. It would be a wonderful story for Lukaku to put those away. It's not going to matter. This is going to be Liverpool, and Liverpool is going to continue their good season, becoming a great season, and their chase for a quadruple, which I think it's out of their hands at this point, but at the very least, they're going to give themselves an opportunity. Liverpool are going to win it.
Jan?
Well, I said that Chelsea are going to win the Champions League. Check. I said they're going to win the Premier League this season. It's out of their reach. Big time out of reach. And I got a feeling that Chelsea will do this. And I think that, yes, Craig had a good analysis on Fabinho missing out. But as much as we talk about the attackers, the Tres Amigos by Liverpool, but also the alternative that Chelsea have going forward, I think this finally going to be decided in the engine room in midfield. And Al talked about it. It's a lot of work for Chelsea to try to stop Thiago, because Thiago is more or less the quarterback out there. He's the guy who decides the tempo and all that kind of thing. Will be decided there, and I got a feeling that this time Chelsea will make it. So I will go for Chelsea again.
Oh, a little bit more balanced right now. Who have you got, Jules?
Yeah, I've got Chelsea as well. On maybe it goes to penalties again, but I've got a feeling that they will do it this time.
Craig?
I think there's no doubt Chelsea were very wasteful in the Carabao Cup final, as Ali mentioned, and that could have been a different story. But they're just not clinical up front. Yeah, they got 3 against Leeds, 2 against Wolves recently, but defensively they've been a bit shaky. I think Liverpool have just been, looked as if they've been at sort of 75%, 80% recently. But that front 3, if they hit form, are hard to stop. And I think just by a whisker, I'm going to go for Liverpool.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.